Christina, thank you so much for joining us for this little chat about specifically the 48-hour film project, but film races in general. I'm sure you have some knowledge about other film races that are out there. But if you can give me a little bit, first just introduce yourself, and then give me a little bit of background information on how the 48 started and maybe just kind of like what options there were for this type of competition at that time.
Right. So it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me, Karen. And the 48-hour film project started back in 2001. We're actually having our 20th anniversary this year. And basically, Mark Ruppert came up with the idea based on the 24-hour play that had started at that time. And he said, hey, we can do that with film. So he and his film partner, Liz Langston, they got some friends together and they thought they'd have about 4 teams. So they thought they'd have their 3 friends who had teams and their own team. And but then by the time the weekend came, there were actually 10 teams who were interested in doing it. And so that very first year, they ran the project like it is today, which is we have this great kickoff where each team is assigned their genre. And today that genre, they actually get 2 genres and they get to choose whether to do one or the other. And then they're also assigned their character, prop, and line of dialogue that they have to put in their film. And then they turn the film in that Sunday. So they have the whole 48 hours to make the film, and where they write, shoot, and edit it. And then that very first time we actually ran the films reel to reel in the theater on that Sunday night. So it was filmmaking all in one weekend. And then after that, they said, wait a minute, this is a ton of fun. We can do it again in DC. And then they started to take it to other cities because they knew filmmakers at other places. And so at that time, Mark Ruppert's actually my brother. And so I would help out when it was in DC. But then in 2005, he and Liz needed someone to help out with the city producers that we were then bringing on board in the different cities. Because at first they took it to each city. And that meant that they then traveled and went to those cities themselves. So in 2005, they brought me on as the director of operations so that I could help out with keeping everything organized at that time throughout the country, and then later on as we expanded internationally.
That's great. I knew some of that, but I didn't know all of that. So it's really cool to hear the backstory behind it. What's neat is you started in 2001 and our first 48 was in 2003. So it was only 2 years later in Atlanta. So it was cool that you guys expanded so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We were actually living in Orlando at the time. We actually drove 8 hours up to Atlanta.
Wow.
6 of us stayed in one little hotel room and made our little film. And
that's fantastic. That's actually one of the fun things about the 48. You can do it in your own city, but you can do it in other cities too. So if you have friends in another city, you could go and visit them, or you can, or just go and stay in a hotel or rent a Airbnb or whatever. So yeah, it's fun.
It's been cool to be part of this group for a while. We actually also did the National Film Challenge from Orlando in like 2004, maybe 2005. It was right around then. So, which is now no longer the National Film Challenge, but it's the 4 Corners.
Yeah, the 4 Points Film Project. So the 4 points of the globe. And so, yeah, we came up with that because we realized that there were filmmakers who we weren't going to reach when we started building city by city. And so that way, this has been always an online project. And so that way, filmmakers all around the world could participate in the 48-hour film project.
Cool. All right. So then let's jump into some other questions. So what's your favorite part about running the 48? What was your official role again, you said?
I'm the director of operations, but I also run the DC 48-hour film project. So my favorite part is to watch the films at the premieres. That is really just the most exciting part, to see what the filmmakers came up with. But also the community around the 48 is really exciting to be a part of. Filmmakers come together at meet and greets in the pre-events. We also have a filmmaker Q&A after each of the screenings so that we can hear from the filmmakers themselves. And then also after the screenings, talking to different filmmakers and audience members about the films. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of my favorite parts too, is the other filmmakers that we meet. There's just this sense of community that's not all competition. There's definitely been, we've been cheering on, like when Crash of Rhinos won Best of DC the one year, we were like, yeah, like it was exciting to see these filmmakers that we had been with for so long win. Even if it wasn't us, it was cool to be able to cheer them on. And
right, because year in and year out, you get to see their work as it moves forward. And so it's fun to see those other teams and what they're doing that year. So that's
absolutely
really nice.
is, yeah.
And so, yeah, we've always had the competition side to the project. So it culminates in the awards for each city that are like the Academy Awards. So all the way up to Best Film, which you all won last year in DC. Congratulations again. Your one day was fantastic. That was awesome. So, so that happens in each city. And then we take our best films to Filmapalooza every year, which is our international film festival and award show, so that the best films then participate on the global level.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, as far as like kind of like how it works with you know, top films go to Filmapalooza, then how it goes along?
Absolutely. So the top films from each city. So last year we were in 70 cities, which we were very excited to be in, since 2020 was a very hard year for everyone around the globe. And normally we're in about 115 cities, which we're hoping to get back to this year. And so those 115 cities, the best films are invited to screen at Filmapalooza, which we do in different cities. So last year we were in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. This year we will be online because it is COVID times. But we have an exciting lineup of events and filmmaker interactions to have everyone participate in. So we're very excited about that. And that happens each year in March. And so then we have those best films participate in a global competition for, again, all the awards through best film of the entire year. And then once we have Filmapalooza, we then take a slate of our top films from there to the Cannes Short Film Corner. And we have our own special screening of the films at Cannes, which is always thrilling. The film teams come and they get to participate at Cannes and then also see their film in the same venue, because it's actually the Palais is a multiplex. And so that same place that you see the huge red carpet, they have all different kinds of screening rooms. And so we're honored to screen the films at the Palais.
Yeah, that's one of the really cool parts about your fest, because not all films that go into the short film corner get a screening, like, right? Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. They do not actually get a screening. So to be there with the 48-hour film project actually gets a screening.
Yeah, that's a really cool part. That was very special when Brian got to go and be a part of that. So
yeah.
And actually one of our actresses went as well. Yeah, so Brian and Claire were both there so that was really a neat time for them.
Fantastic.
Okay, cool. So one of the things we wanted to talk to you about is, so last year COVID hit right before the start of like the film race season. And so what was that like for you guys to have to suddenly pivot? When did you realize that you were going to have to make some changes and that this wasn't just going to go away really quickly?
Right.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about that.
So really early on, we figured that we were going to actually have to make changes. And so one thing that did work out for us was we'd actually already been working on a solution to uploading films. Because of the time element, uploading films has always been a challenge because we want to do it in a fair way to make sure the films come in on time and they are marked on time. And so we've had a lot of experience to build on from the 4 Points Film Project, but then we wanted to use our own system for uploading those. So at the same time that the pandemic hit, we are also putting the finishing touches on that. So that was a really fortuitous moment for us. But the next big hurdle was then switching in almost all of our cities to online events, because we still wanted to do the live kickoff and the screenings with the filmmaker Q&A afterwards. And so there are a ton of platforms out there for doing screenings now. There were a few actually in the beginning of last year, and now there are many more. And so it's been really great trying to figure out which works best. And then interestingly enough, the trickiest part is because we have around 12 filmmakers that we want to bring to our Q&As. That actually was the trickiest part. So we needed to incorporate Zoom into what we were doing. And so we were able to build on that and move forward. So really wanted to make sure that the community part was still with us with our online events and screenings.
I think it's really cool that you were able to do that, to make those changes. I'm glad you were already in the works, because that obviously made it so that you could actually do it this year instead of having to like just cancel a year.
Mm-hmm. Which was an option last year. That was an option. We didn't want it to be the option, so we kept working towards it not being. But it's one of those things where it threw everyone, right? So
yeah,
we're
totally.
excited.
But it actually made it so that we were able to participate this year. I don't know that we would have participated if it wasn't online.
Right. Right.
Because for us personally, we had just had a newborn, and so
yes.
Because we didn't have to drive anywhere, it was actually easier in some ways, because we currently live probably, with DC traffic, probably at least an hour from DC.
Right.
So what were some of the safety guidelines that you put into place because of the pandemic, obviously, but was there anything that you required? Was it mostly just suggestions? How did you set the example, I guess, with that?
Right. So we realized that filmmakers needed resources to maintain safe sets in this new era. And so we created our own guidelines, which of course include the same things that everyone has to do these days, which is wearing masks and physically distancing yourselves, but also some cleaning protocols and also protocols for maintaining equipment with only, certain people, right, maintain their own equipment and that kind of thing. And putting that all in one place, I think, was a huge help for the filmmakers. And then on top of that, there's a safe set certificate you take online. And so depending on when our cities were taking place and the level of coronavirus at the time, in some cities that was actually a requirement. And then in other cities that was strongly encouraged. It's actually a great, very short certificate that you can take. And so we encourage everyone to do it because as always been the case, the safety of the filmmakers is a priority for the 48-hour film project. The last thing we say at kickoff is have fun and be safe, because if you're not safe, then it's not worth it for the whole weekend experience that you're having.
Yeah, totally. We definitely did the safe sets certificate. And it was very simple. I was bummed because I got one question wrong, but it was I blame the wording of the question.
Right. And the other thing about the 48-hour film project, it's really flexible. You choose your own team. So if you want to choose the people you bubble with, if you want to choose to do it on your own. We have had one filmmaker in the early days who did about 30 48-hour film projects because he was called Cinema Solo. He did everything on his own. So it really is up to the filmmakers how they pull their teams together. and how they can implement the safety protocols that they need to keep everybody safe.
So along those lines then, did you see any teams that changed a lot from what they normally do to what they did during this film race?
Definitely, we had some filmmakers who, just decided not to do it with their regular team and just to do it on their own. Joe Diskowitz with Discordian Films, he definitely went that route this year. But also, we saw teams that decided to mask up the whole team. So their actors and their crew, everybody had masks on. So really, I guess one thing is some of the stories might have been sort of more narrow or smaller in scope, but again, the storytelling pushed through, so it wasn't really noticeable.
Do you feel like, for us, we always say art through adversity. And so oftentimes some of the best things that come out of films and art in general that people create is because of their limitations. And so do you feel like some of the films were really pushed to be better in some ways because of this? Or do you feel like it was just kind of maintaining the quality, or how do you feel about that?
Yes, I think that definitely gives people something to strive for. And so, for sure, in some cases, it probably pushed storytelling to even a higher plateau. So, so I think that there's definitely truth in that. I think the great thing about the 48 and other film races is they always have these constraints, starting with the time constraint, but other constraints as well. And so definitely problem solving is a key skill for any team that's going to participate. And so that's definitely part of it.
Do you feel like teams that have been doing this for a while, that are used to the time constraints like you were talking about and the limitations, were better suited to do this more so than the new teams? Or do you feel like new teams had an advantage because they had no like preconceived ideas?
What each team brings to it is unique. So I think that, and that's a great thing about this kind of event, is that each team brings to it what they bring to it. And so you don't know, there's never been a dichotomy of this is, you can say, hey, that's a first time filmmaker, or that person's done this project 7 times, because everybody's pushing themselves. I think that's really the key.
Cool. I think that's neat. I think it's, I feel like some people may have been scared away from doing it this year because of all the restraints. And they, like teams that have been doing it for a while, probably were like, oh, I don't want to do it that way because I don't want to have to do something different than I'm used to. And then I bet some other teams, I think it opened up a chance for other teams to get involved because they live further away. In fact, have you seen an increase in people doing, and maybe you don't even know because maybe you don't know where some of these teams are coming from, but have you seen an increase in teams participating that are nowhere near the city that they're participating in? Because I mean, you could do any city, right? Like we could participate in Madison, Wisconsin.
Right, absolutely. Definitely the geographically based elements have opened up this year. And so anecdotally, there've definitely been teams that have participated in other cities, and because they can. And we have audience that can now see films that they couldn't before because the geographic area has widened. So that's kind of an exciting part of it. One great thing is that teams can also participate in different places, right? So a team can have members in the city that's happening, but also have somebody who's in South Africa or LA or Vietnam or somewhere else. So that definitely, we've had teams do that before in the past, but because of how people are shooting their films this year, that's definitely opened it up even further.
Cool. How do you see these types of film challenges evolving? Do you see more of them, more online ones popping up? Do you see, I don't know, just how do you see the film challenges like yours and like other ones that have popped up changing as we go?
Right. So I think that adding the online element definitely will stay as part of these events going forward. I think people will be offering, as soon as we can get back to in-person, they'll continue with in-person events, but they'll also have a combination of in-person and online. And so that, I think, will be something fun and for these projects as we move forward. One thing about this past year has shown that the people who have still gone forward with wanting to do something creative, they have been so thrilled to be able to be a part of it. And so even though definitely it was fewer people last year, it was definitely an experience that they continue to love. So I think for the 48 and other projects, I think there's still going to be an audience of filmmakers. And for everyone, it's always a range of beginner filmmakers through experienced filmmakers who participate, because everybody gets something out of it that that really speaks to them. Doing something like this really takes your filmmaking to the next level, whether you're a beginner who is finally going to do their first film, or if you're an experienced filmmaker who can try out a new technique or can work with new people to build your team. You're going to have something to put on your reel that then can boost your reel and maybe even help get you that next job. So these projects always have people from the whole range of filmmaking, and that makes it a lot of fun for the film community that develops.
100% agree. We tell people that all the time, that we do these film races because it's kind of like a um, it's like a proving ground for bringing new people on, and because we also do this professionally, usually more on the corporate side of things, it's a great way for us to try someone out new, or in some cases we've had people that we've worked with professionally for years, that said, well, hey, can I come and join you on a film race weekend? And we're like, absolutely. We had our audio guy that he doesn't do free. In fact, I think the first time we worked with him, we were talking about film races and he was like, oh yeah, I don't do that like free stuff. And then a couple of years later, he liked working with us so much. He's like, can I come? And
Yeah, absolutely.
so,
Absolutely. And if you want to build skills in other areas, right? So you might have a day job where you do one thing, but you want to try something else. It's a really easy way to jump in and try to do that.
that's very true. We have a lot of our team are people that have day jobs that are not in this field. Mm-hmm. And so it is a great creative outlet for them. And yeah, we just have such a great team. Is there anything that you learned last year from doing everything in a different way that you're taking into this year?
The great thing about being around for 20 years and also living through last year is you get to build on your experience and try new things. So last year we tried a couple of new events. We tried the Stuck at Home, which is smaller challenges online. We tried an animation project, which is all animation. And then we also did the Global Film Challenge, which was fun because it was more like a tournament style with online voting and films pushed through in a bracket to the top part of the voting to have the final winners be chosen. And so actually we're making changes to those projects, but we are bringing all those projects back because we know that it's fun to try lots of different things. And so different filmmakers want to do different events. In DC, we're going to try to come back again in the July timeframe. So we're working with AFI to see what their timeframe is for bringing people back for in-person events, to try to see if we can come back to that. And then also we hope to again bring back our horror sci-fi project in DC as well in the fall. So, you know, we're still putting the opportunities out there for filmmakers to do their thing. and we're excited to see the films that come through.
That's great. I was actually going to ask that if you knew when the DC dates were going to be yet, because I know it's traditionally been like end of April, beginning of May.
That's right. Usually we do the first week of May until a couple of years ago when it pushed back. And so that worked out well for last year. And I think it'll work out well for this year. I think we need a little bit of a buffer here, but we hope by April 1st, we'll have the dates in place and be able to move forward. So I think it'll be great.
That's awesome. We're excited. I don't know what level we'll be participating this year, but we're excited to see whatever comes out of it in participation and the films that come out of it. So
one thing I would add is filmmakers come to the 48 in all different kinds of ways. And I think that's a really great thing about these projects. They can come by and join a team. They can, meet filmmakers at meet and greets, and they can come that way. Or you just bring your team to it, and your team could be your colleagues. It could be your team that you make films with already. It could be your family members. It could be your friends. You just want to get together and make a film on a weekend. And the fun of doing something creative and new with your friends that turns into an actual film that is screened, it's really thrilling for everyone. So I think that so that's a great thing about these projects is that you can come where you are.
And I think that's really neat. And I think one thing that we always tell people why we do these, because we've done 20 some film races. We've done a couple other ones as well. And one thing we always tell people is at the end of the weekend, you have a movie. I mean, how many times do we as filmmakers go into a project, we get excited about it, we film it, and then it sits in the editing suite for months, years. What's great about this is in 2 days, you have a movie. And so that's always exciting to us, that there is a tangible product at the end of this, something you can be proud of. Even if it's not great, you still accomplish something.
Right. And then you can use that film going forward. You can always make edits to that film. You can take that film on the festival circuit. This is really a building block for things to come.
And we've done that. We've taken many of our films out to festivals. And so that is a really great, it's because of the 48-hour film project that we have such a repertoire, that we have this large number of films in our possession. So we are thankful that something like this exists for filmmakers like us to create, and that the limitations are there to help us actually get something done, because artistic people can be very flighty and not non-committal, or we tend to not finish things because it's never perfect, right?
Right. There's always something new you can do to it and ways to push it forward. So yes, I hear you.
It's never perfect. You just run out of time.
It's good to have a deadline.
Yes.
And then you never know. We have one filmmaker, Bill Coughlin, who I'm sure you know.
Oh, yeah.
He one time a festival invited him to have a retrospective of his 48-hour films. And so they showed about 10 of his films at a festival. So
that's neat.
You never know the opportunities that are going to come forward.
Oh yeah. That's really cool. All right. Well, do you have any advice to filmmakers that you haven't already given? I mean, you've given a few pieces of advice already, but is there any other advice you'd give to filmmakers that are considering doing it this year or sometime in the future?
Right. The best thing is to sign up so that you've already given yourself the deadline to do it. And then do some pre-work. It doesn't take too much pre-work, but just make sure that you get your team together. You have a couple of different locations if you're going to do a couple different locations, so that you have some flexibility once you start writing your story during the weekend. And then also, choose the equipment you're going to have and do a test workflow of that equipment, so that those things are already set before you start in the creative part of your project.
That's all solid advice. We, in fact, this interview we're going to be putting on our Film Race channel on our YouTube channel, and so we've been trying to add to that to give people advice on how to do these film races, and so we've got a bunch of good things up there, a bunch of good videos up there.
Yeah, it's really a great resource.
Everything you've said is on there. Is like stuff
Right.
that's like, yes, this is exactly what you need to do. Like, here's how you do pre-production, and here's we've given, it's just yeah. So that's spot on to what we've experienced as well.
Absolutely. I would add to that advice to filmmakers to say, watch the Film Race series because it's really informative.
Have you looked through it?
Absolutely.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
okay.
it's really the videos are topic oriented, so that's fantastic. And you pack a lot of information into them. So you and Brian have done a great job.
Oh, well, thank you for checking those out. We have a whole bunch that we want to do. It's just a matter of getting them filmed and edited and out there. So, it takes time. And sometimes we just don't have that time. So we've also had to pivot a little bit as well to, before the pandemic hit, we had filmed one about locations. And so we haven't actually released that yet because there's just, things kind of change. I think everything in it is still pretty relevant, but we just haven't had a big need to necessarily push that one out. But then we filmed one about doing a film race during the pandemic after we did the DC 48 in, was that July, August?
Right.
So, yeah. So, okay, cool. Anything else that you wanted to say or anything you want to plug for the 48? Anything people should check out or?
Right. Definitely sign up for the newsletter so that you know when the events are coming. And so we have a global newsletter, but we also have a city newsletter. So you definitely want to sign up for the one in your city so you know what the local filmmaking events that are happening. And so the website is 48hourfilm.com. And so in DC, that would be /DC or Baltimore /Baltimore. And so we're about to jump into all of our events. And of course, Filmapalooza, because it's online this year, is open to everyone. And we are going to have workshops. We are going to have networking events that really, I think, are going to be a ton of fun. So I encourage, and then of course we're going to show all the films that won their different cities last year. And so I really encourage everyone to attend if they can, because I think you will get a lot out of it, and it'll be a lot of fun to be there.
Cool. And if people want to do that, do they just go to 48hourfilm.com?
Yes. And so all the information, will be there.
Well, thank you, Christina, for joining me to chat about this for a while. And thank you for giving us your time. I know you're busy, and especially with film race season kicking off here soon. We're really excited to see where the 48 goes and the films that come out of it this year. So
thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to talk to you, Karen.
Yeah, you too.